Philadelphia, San Jose, or DC, Los Angeles Galaxy,
Pitch Pass,
Colorado Rapids, Vancouver Whitecaps, Seattle Sounders, Montreal Impact, Plus USA, New York Red Bulls.
Pitch Pass, your all-access credential to the people that matter in MLS. Here's your host, Greg Roach.
Are we double dipping this week? You're damn right we're going to double dip this week. 2 shows because we've got to get you ready for Tuesday. Now, I know there's a whole slate of matches coming up this weekend, and we kind of touched on those in our first Pitch Pass of the week. That was with Pro Soccer Talks, NBC Sports, Steve Davis. So make sure you check that out and download it. Actually, why don't you listen to the entire catalog of Pitch Passes? They're all fantastic listens, and there's some great articles to read as well at pitchpass.com. So why don't you start there? Then you can subscribe to the podcast there, however you want to do it, through your iTunes, through your Stitcher, however. And then listen to the latest episode with Steve Davis. And then we can get you ready for Tuesday. The U.S. Open Cup final is upon us. First, make sure you spread the word about the show, and if you need to follow us on Twitter to get more information, you can do that as well. At Pitch Pass is our Twitter handle. Rio Tinto Stadium is the place to be Tuesday night for the U.S. Open Cup final between Real Salt Lake and DC United. 2 guests today, 1 from each team. The coach of DC United, Ben Olsen, will join us later. We start with the general manager of Real Salt Lake right now. His name, Garth Lagerwey. Garth, thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely, man.
Well, thank you for joining the show again. I appreciate that, Garth. Now that we're one of the biggest podcasts in MLS, it's not a big deal for you to be on. But I remember a couple of years ago when we were just launching, you were one of our first guests. So you've been on the ground floor of this phenomenon.
Hey, I would say that you're building the building ground floor by upper level now. So, congrats to you on the progress and all your success.
We're so big now that I actually have other people reaching out to your people to set up the interviews now, rather than having to do it myself. It's nice.
It is very important to have people.
When did you know that you made it? When you got people?
You know what? I felt like maybe I had a chance to make it the day that Dave Checketts called me and interviewed me for the job, and I thought, there's no way he's crazy enough to seriously consider me for this, but thank goodness he was serious. So that was maybe the first day.
I still, and I don't know if you do this because it's your life, but I still think to myself, wow, this was a guy doing color commentary for DC United and then jumps into this, and now he's, I don't want to say you're the hottest GM in MLS because you've been hot for a while, but you're definitely one of the movers and shakers in MLS now.
Hey, that's just because I put on a lot of weight since I left DC. That's not necessarily a good thing. No, look, it's been a lot of fun. It's been a great experience out here and gotten to work with some great people. And it's been a continuous challenge, and particularly going against some of the heavyweights we have on the West Coast in LA and Seattle. But it's been fun. It's been fun being the little guy that David taking on all the Goliaths and having some success.
And I'm sure you still get out there with Nick every once in a while, just show him a couple of things, some reflex savers and stuff like that, correct?
I know you know this, but Nick was a rookie my last year playing with the Miami Fusion, and back then we were still going to a show here and there every once in a while. But I would say our relationship's modified itself slightly when I became the general manager and he became our goalkeeper. So, but good times always in our history. That's
got to make you feel good, though, that there's a guy who was in the league that you played with is still in the league and still performing at a high level.
That or it just makes me feel really old. Nick is no teenager anymore either. No, it is great. We have a number of the guys. I mean, from that Miami Fusion team that folded, and Nick obviously came up and played for DC United after that. But Kyle Beckman's still with us from that team, and Andy Williams is a scout for us now from that team. So Jeff Cassar, who's our top assistant, he played with me on that team. So a lot of weird Miami Fusion connections still to this day.
Well, let me ask you, and this will be an easy one for you because it's just speculation, but what would be your thoughts on an MLS franchise going back into Miami? Would it be successful? What needs to be done differently? What would be your thoughts on a Miami franchise?
From what I understand, the demographics down there have only improved from a soccer consumer perspective since those teams folded. That was 12 years ago already. So that part's good. I think it's the kind of glamour market and city that David Beckham might be interested in, but I also think you need a star of that type of magnitude for it to be relevant and for it to matter. South Florida in general, not a great sports market. The Heat, when they're not winning back-to-back titles, even struggle to sell out. The Dolphins, the NFL sells out everywhere. The Dolphins don't sell out all the time there. So, and the Marlins is an ongoing disaster in downtown Miami, and unfortunately may have poisoned some of the market for a potential soccer stadium in the future. But if you get the backing of someone as big time as Beckham, and you get the right funding behind it and the right amount of marketability, because I definitely think it's going to have to be a sizzle market more than a steak market. I think you could make it work, but I don't think it'd be easy.
Do you how important is stadium placement? I know that's important everywhere, but you guys don't have a downtown stadium, and obviously you're not having any problems. Is stadium placement even more important in a city like Miami?
It's for me, it depends on size of market. We are a smaller market here, that also means usually that you have less competition. So if you look at a market like ours, you have the Jazz in the winter, you have RSL in the summer, and I think we can get away with being in a suburb in that context. I think if you're in a bigger market, you better be downtown to be relevant. And you just look at all the success stories: Portland and Seattle, first and foremost among them. Toronto, just on the outskirts of downtown. But some of the teams that have done the best, that is where they've been, and I don't think that is a coincidence.
One of the things that makes me nervous, especially about the teams or the cities that we're hearing, I'm thinking specifically about Atlanta and Miami, is the fact that these are, like you said, unlike Seattle, unlike you guys in Salt Lake, unlike Portland, these are four major sports cities. And carving a niche out with four teams you got to muss around with rather than one, which you guys have, or a couple in Portland and Seattle, that makes things much more difficult, even just starting out of the box.
It does, but at the same time, you only have to get a minimal percentage of that population in order to succeed in terms of television viewers, in terms of spectators. And I think that the league really isn't the national league. It isn't absolutely relevant until we get in those markets. And I think one of the key things for our television contract is up at the end of 2014, so we have another year. And I think if we're able to progress to the point where we can, as a league, announce not just the new New York team, but an Atlanta team and a Miami team, that contract negotiation for the television deal looks totally different, because you're now covering 3 of the top 10 DMAs in the country that you really weren't serving before, and that can be a game changer in terms of driving television revenue, which in turn can be poured back into the league and the product to really improve the level and increase the quality of things. Well,
as we start to look at your team, last question about this, and you're a great person to ask, and I would argue that looking at market size for television markets, should that be the number one thing we're looking at? Because to me, the most fun cities are Kansas City, Salt Lake City, Portland, Seattle. I don't know if any of those are top 10 markets. And so when we're thinking about making expansion moves, and is Atlanta, Miami as important because of their market size, or are we looking for passion in, say, St. Louis or San Antonio?
If you look at the other sports leagues, the percentage of revenue that they generate from television is dramatically higher than it is for MLS. If you look specifically at the NHL, they faced this dilemma about a decade ago, and before they began their partnership with Versus, which has now become NBC Sports Network. And the NHL had to basically was in this dilemma of they had to keep driving ticket prices higher and higher and higher and higher, and you know this from the Capitals in DC. But there's nowhere to go. Eventually, we're at right now, we're averaging about 18,000 or 19,000 people as a league. We're at about 90% of capacity, maybe a little bit more. There's only so many more dollars you can squeeze out of ticketing and squeeze out of sponsorship relative to the market size of the teams. And so you have to have TV. You have to increase it. That is by far the largest untapped revenue source. And I completely agree that packed stadiums, raucous stadiums, vibrant stadiums are big selling points for our league. But without the larger markets getting better participation, getting more relevant, getting fans more invested, the league can't take that next step.
Agreed. And, it's a philosophical thing where, my counter to that would be, okay, well, NBC Sports Network, they seem to really enjoy going to Rio Tinto. Well, recently they've enjoyed it. Seattle and Portland. Why? Because of the atmosphere. Not so much going to the markets where we're looking at maybe half-empty stadiums.
That's right, and I definitely appreciate it. I'm flattered by your comment. On the other hand, we've been on national TV a grand total of 3 times this year.
I said recently.
So clearly broadcasters are picking markets larger than ours. And we're a team that's been pretty consistently successful over 5-6 years now. So I do think market size dictates, or at least informs, some of the network's choices.
So let me ask you, because you're a perfect person to ask this question to. We always talk about or think about L.A., New York, Seattle, big market teams. They're the ones who I would imagine will be pushing for lifting of salary cap restrictions, or at least a significant raise in salary cap. But you guys are not a big market team. You guys don't have a lot of big money players on your roster. However, you have been pinched by the salary cap because I feel like if there were no salary cap, or if it was raised, you'd still have Will Johnson, Fabiana Spindola, and maybe Jameson Olave still on your team. So what are you guys, a team who has been pinched by that, but also was a smaller market team, what are your thoughts on raising salary cap?
I think that if you want to, one of the ways to, again, we talk about this in the grander picture, the wider picture, is we want to become one of the best leagues in the world by 2022. That's the stated name of the league. I believe, my personal belief is that you have to take on Mexico before you worry about anything else.
Agreed.
You have a large number of Hispanic viewers, and the last time I looked, the ratings for Liga MX are higher than the ratings for MLS in the United States. So we got to become the most watched league in our own country before we worry about taking on Europe and taking on some of these grander things. And if you look at Mexico, they pay about 2-to-1 what we do, player for player. And I don't know that we have to match them. I think that there are advantages to living in the United States that we might be able to exploit and to recruit players. But only the market will prove that. But right now, we're not in the same market as Mexico is. We're not getting Mexican players out of Mexico. We're not competing for the same guys as Mexico is. So to me, you have to raise the cap incrementally, at least to compete with them, if you want to take that first step forward in quality. But I'd also stress that I don't know that that's the majority view. And talking to a lot of folks who are on the league at the All-Star game and some of the league meetings we recently had in Columbus, I don't know that there's a consensus to raise the cap. Certainly you're correct that we wouldn't have traded away 3 All-Star players if the cap had been higher. But on the other hand, that's not really I don't know that in itself is an argument for raising the cap. Every team faces the same cap pressures, and every team's got to make hard decisions, and you're always going to have to turn over your team in any kind of salary cap system. But I would make a slightly different argument, which is just that strategically, in my opinion, if you want to raise the level of the quality of play, you need to do a couple things. You need to continue to incorporate homegrown players, academy players, because for any business, developing your own product, your own players is the only way to compete long term, particularly as we expand the league from 20 teams once New York comes in out to 24 teams by the end of the decade, as the commissioner has said we will do. So we got a lot of challenges, and we got to create a lot of soccer players. I think raising the salary cap is only one piece of that puzzle. You got to have a higher number of domestic players produced. You also have to have a higher level of domestic players produced. And I think if we do that, then that will also force us to be more involved in the transfer market, which will then result in, I think, a win-win for everybody, meaning the players' wages would likely go up as they gain access to those markets when everyone sees the quality of MLS, and also hopefully a higher salary cap as we're able to generate some revenue through transferring some players on good financial terms to the league.
Garth, I loved your big boy answer, and it was very mature of you to say, for the greater good of the league, I had to give up 3 All-Stars. Did you have that same attitude when you were giving up said All-Stars? It's
shoot, we're 9 months past it at this point.
Exactly.
So I think I made my peace with it at this point, and we've been fortunate to have some success. We can just get a couple more wins and get in the playoffs. We will at least have survived it. But no, it was really painful. It stunk. It was, we'd had 56 points in 2012 and had a good team again, and felt like we'd done a lot of things right. And we're really loath to part with those guys, but it did force us to start to try to reinvent ourselves and try to get younger. And look, that process was probably inevitable at some point. That might have made it a little bit more abrupt and a little bit more poignant in terms of the guys that we got rid of were really core to our culture and kind of the foundation of the club, dating back to 2008 when we started. But that's pro sports. You got to adapt, you got to evolve, or you're going to die.
Let me ask you about two players that you probably don't get asked. Well, one you get asked about a lot. The other one you probably don't get asked about that much. But you brought up the academy. You brought up younger players. And Enzo Martinez didn't come up through the academy. You drafted him. But what's his status right now? Why have we not seen him much featured in the first team?
I think that we struggle to find the best position for Enzo. He's on loan with Carolina right now, and one of the things that we decided on when we went on this loan, was to put Enzo out for an extended period of time so he could really get consistent games, consistent competition with another group to really kind of get a fresh mental start on everything and to see where he was the best fit. I think we've tried him at holding midfielder, we've tried him at right back, we've tried him on the side of our diamond, we've tried him a little at attacking midfielder, which is maybe where he played the most in college. And on paper, Enzo has everything that we would want for a player to succeed. He's got bite. He's good technically. He's a hard worker. He's a really positive kid with a good mentality. So every time you talk to Enzo, every time you watch Enzo play, you think this has got to work. But so far it hasn't. And we're going to continue to be patient. It's only his second year with us. We hope to have Enzo back again next year, and we hope for him to play a bigger role in our club going forward.
And I'm going to ask you to give up some of your secrets now with the second player, and that question is, how the hell did you find Ole Miss Garcia?
Just scouting. We actually were scouting another kid in the off season. We'd made the decision where we started the hard decision to trade away all those guys. We traded them away all for cash, and we plowed all that cash back into forwards. We felt like at the end of last season we had two options, Sabriel and Spindler, and that was it. And we wanted to have at least four. We wound up with five, and with some young kids that have exceeded our expectations. But Ole Miss was playing for a small club called Quindío, and it's. There are a number of clubs in Columbia now that can compete with MLS in terms of what they spend on players, but fortunately for us, Quindío is a smaller club that was not yet willing to do that. So we paid a substantial transfer fee for Ole Miss. We spotted him while we were watching another more established player that we wound up not being able to afford, and we're able to settle on Ole Miss and really like the athleticism and the technical ability, and I think this kid is just got a world of promise. And if the more games he plays, I think the better he'll get. He needs to get just a little bit sturdier yet, in the sense that he gets a lot of knocks in the game because of how hard he plays. I think he's got to get a little bit stronger in terms of his long-term durability. But man, I'm as excited about Ole Miss Garcia as I've ever been about a foreign signing.
Is it a weekly phone call to Jason Kreis or a daily phone call to Jason Kreis asking him to get Garcia more minutes?
I think you understand the coach to GM dynamic well. Now, look, as the GM, I'm always pushing for all the young guys to play, and the coach is always telling me to calm down and he'll integrate them slowly when they're ready. So it's a good tug of war back and forth. It's a good push and pull. As you know, Jason and I go back 25 years, and there's a healthy tension to those discussions, but we're both constantly pushing, probably from opposite sides of this question, and trying to figure out how to get these kids on the field as often as possible while maximizing their chances for success and maximizing the team's chances for success. So there's no perfect answer here at all, but I do think that Ole Miss is going to get some opportunities here down the stretch to show that he deserves to be out there for the playoffs, and hopefully he takes advantage of them.
Let's talk about the academy. You guys are doing something a little bit different than I think every other team in the league. Your academy is actually based in Arizona at Casa Grande. You guys are there for preseason. Walk me through how that works for you guys, and what do you guys have actually in Utah or in Salt Lake City to look for talent there as well?
We have very good relationships with the local clubs here in Utah and in Salt Lake specifically, and we take the best players from Utah right now and send them down to Arizona. Arizona is a residency program, and so we're fortunate enough to be able to put kids down there and have them live, eat, and breathe soccer 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And it's really a unique setting, with the possible exception of Bradenton, where the U.S. national team, under-17 team trains. But we're year-round. Bradenton, those kids go to school down there, but they tend to be focused around camps, and they're there for 6 months at a time, a year at a time. Our residency is around the clock. So we've really had a lot of success with it. We've I think started to make better inroads into Phoenix where I think there's still a lot of undiscovered talent.
Yeah.
I think there's still even more talent we can get to in Salt Lake as well. So it's the great majority of the kids are local, local meaning between Utah and Arizona, which constitute our home territory, and then there's a limited number of kids from outside of those territories that have relocated and have joined us down there in residency and go to school down there, and we have the great good fortune to have Martin Vasquez, the national team's top assistant, leading our program down there. So that's been a huge asset to us as well. And our under-16 team won the national championship going back just to June. So a couple months ago to win our first title, that was really a big deal. And hopefully it's a harbinger of things to come.
How'd you guys get that area? Like, how is that under the Real umbrella, the state of Arizona or Phoenix in particular?
It predates my time here, but as I understand it, the expansion agreement, which allowed the formation of a team in Salt Lake, recognized that Salt Lake would be the smallest market in the league and might need more than just the Salt Lake demographic, and if you were ever to try to build a viable youth program. And so we were awarded the states of Utah and Arizona at that time, and I believe that that's something that's promised to us in perpetuity, if I understood the expansion agreement correctly.
And how often do you, or at least the staff, get down to Casa Grande and actually check out the talent and evaluate?
I'm probably down there a couple times a year myself, but that, to be clear, the staff down there is part of our staff.
Yeah.
Those are guys that work for us, and they play the same system we do, and so we talk to those guys, communicate with them regularly. MLS has a couple of tournaments a year, separate and apart from the U.S. Academy schedule. Andy Williams, our scout, is down there regularly liaising with those guys as well. I think you mentioned it at the top of this segment, just saying, we're down there every preseason where our first team is training, and we're incorporating these kids directly into our first team training sessions. And then the last couple of years, and we hope again in the spring next year, we participate in the Desert Diamond Cup in Tucson, Arizona. That's only about an hour from our academy. So there's really winds up being about a month where we're in pretty close quarters, pretty close proximity to our academy, and our kids can come up and watch us play, and we can incorporate some of them into our group, and it's really been really, really successful for us as we move forward.
It's going to be interesting on Tuesday at Rio Tinto for the U.S. Open Cup final. A lot of intertwinement between the two teams that are playing. Obviously, you hate DC United, of course. What? No? Oh, sorry. So obviously, it's going to be more important for you to win than it would be if you were playing another team. Correct, Garth?
I'd say we're playing for the Cup final. My wife is from DC, and so I don't know. I know that DC is at the very worst her second favorite team. Look, it's definitely neat to be playing against them, and having worked for them, having gotten my start there, DC United will always have a special place for me in terms of how I think about the league and think about teams. But when we step on the field for the Open Cup final, there can only be one winner, and we feel like we've had a good year, but we haven't won anything since 2009, and I think DC is about 13 titles ahead of us right now. So we got to try to close that gap on Tuesday.
Well, and this is probably a better question for Jason, but I'm talking to you, so I'm going to ask you instead. This, unlike DC, and we'll talk to Ben Olsen actually in the next segment, their plan is, all right, well, the weekend match against TFC, we're trotting out the second team, so we're ready for Tuesday. You guys don't have that luxury. You're in the middle of a playoff race. You've got a big match against Vancouver. The week after, it's a big match against FC Dallas. How does that change your mindset, or does it change at all for Tuesday's U.S. Open Cup final?
We have a lot of experience with this juggling matches. I mean, we've had the good fortune of being in Champions League, I think, 3 of the last 4 years. So we're ready. We're used to rotating lineups and switching groups and having everybody ready, and we feel like we have that mentality installed in our team. So we have a 3-game week at Vancouver, then home for the Open Cup final, then home for Dallas. We obviously got to try to win all 3 games. Just as you said, we're in the midst of a really tight playoff race, and the reality is we're probably going to trot out different groups for different games, and I think unequivocally the Open Cup's the most important of those games.
All right, so before I let you go, I want some quick hitters. I'm a Real Salt Lake fan. I want you to allay my fears on some of the following issues. Are you ready, Garth?
Sounds rapid fire. Let's do it.
Allay my fear. This is actually just a nationwide thing. Luis Gil playing for Mexico.
I have never heard Luis personally say that he wanted to play for anybody but the United States, and of course he represented the United States this summer. So I'm hopeful and optimistic that he will be part of the the U.S. national team program for a long time to come.
The team's, I won't say shaky, but I will say inconsistent form the last month or so, culminating with the home loss versus San Jose, which I would imagine for you was a big loss for you guys.
Yeah, I think we were actually pretty good. I mean, we'd won, I think, 104-0, 4-2 the last 3 games, and then we went to Seattle and got beat by a really good team, and then I think had a poor performance against San Jose. I think it's fair to say. So I think it's a little bit of a wobble. I think a lot of teams go through those over the course of the season, and there's just no time to kind of bemoan our fate. We have 3 games this week that are just massive, and kind of doesn't matter how we talk about them. We got to go out and play and show that we can keep the ball out of the net, and particularly off of set pieces, and that we can score some goals. And we got to be better at both.
This is exactly what you wanted, though, when you got to Salt Lake, was the, hey, you know what, we had a wobble at home. Let's not act like the ends of the world, but people have such a high standard and expectation for the way Real Salt Lake plays that people do consider it a wobble, and people are kind of putting their finger near the panic button when they see that they drop points at home.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think the disappointing thing about San Jose was that, for me, I felt like we lost our identity a little bit. We do have an identity here. We're Salt Lake, and when we play with the ball, we attack when we possess the ball. And the foundation of that is passing. And against San Jose, we looked more like San Jose than San Jose did. We resorted, for long stretches of that game just to pumping balls in the box, and that's just not our style of play. That's not our strength, particularly in a game where Alvaro Saborio wasn't available to us. So I think it's a lot of this is just about being calm, specifically not pushing that panic button, understanding that we've had some good success over a sustained period of time this year. We've had 26 different guys start games for us this year, and I've had good results with virtually all of them. And we have, we feel like we're getting healthy, and we got a lot of guys ready to contribute, and we got to remember who we are. We got to remember to keep the ball on the ground and to play and to attack, and we know teams are going to park the bus against us and defend for long stretches, and we just got to be patient and break them down methodically and hopefully get some goals.
Garth, allay my fear as a Real Salt Lake fan that Jason Kreis will not be coaching NYCFC in 2015.
I don't know the answer to that one.
All right, well, then tell me that Garth Lagerwey, GM, is doing everything he can to make sure that doesn't happen in 2015.
There's no question about that. There will be no one sadder than me if Jason leaves, and Jason knows that, and the club knows that. But I look at it this way: it's a testament to what we've accomplished, and that there are other clubs that are interested in Jason. And we've preached to our players for years that through collective success, individual recognition would come. And I think this year really began to prove that. We've had guys named in the past to all-star teams and best 11s, but we now have 3 guys that are two in Beckerman and Romano that are pretty firmly in the national team group, and Beltran, who's on the fringes, is a 3rd guy, and these guys are in contention to play in the World Cup, the biggest stage in the world. And none of those guys would be there but for the collective success of RSL. And we've preached that over and over and over again to our guys. And so I think now that same kind of dynamic is happening with our technical staff and our front office, and I think we have to look at it in the same positive light that people are finally noticing that we're pretty good and that we've had some success. And what we have to do now is stay together and put our head down and keep working, and hopefully good things will happen. All
right, well, final thing. Garth Lagerwey will still be the GM in 2015 to have these conversations with Jason Kreis. Allay my fear, Garth.
I hope that we I hope that we do well enough where this is a question, because if no one's asking about me when my contract runs out at the end of 14, then the team hasn't done well. It really is the same thing, and not to resort to just the truism, but it really is correct. If we are able to have continued sustained success, then you'll have opportunities, and the club will have opportunities, and who knows what happens then.
Garth, appreciate it. Again, you were in on the ground floor. We're only still building the first floor now, but you were there when we started the foundation, and I thank you for coming on, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely, Roach, and it's been such a great experience for me and my family out here in Salt Lake. I'm really privileged and lucky to be a part of this, and really grateful to our fans that they've embraced our club, and I'm hopeful we can bring them a championship on Tuesday.
Well, and I will also say as we leave, and I know you're not going to talk about the situation, so I'll just make the comment and then let you go. Your wife is a D.C. girl, so maybe she come home in 2015 and you take some reins. That's all I'm going to say, Garth. Have a great time and good luck on Tuesday.
All right, Russ. Thanks, man.
It's Garth Lagerwey, general manager of Real Salt Lake. We've reminded you a few times, Gold TV is where you're going to find the U.S. Open Cup final. It's happening on Tuesday at Rio Tinto, and RSL playing D.C. United.